How's it going, everybody? I'm just kind of doing a very sort of subtle, earnest, soft relaunch of my channel here. And looks like I'm kicking it off with just some quick thoughts on the new Dario Argento film, Dark Glasses, which is available to stream on Shudder. First of all, despite the fact that I don't think this is quite the return to form that Argento, was striving for, I do have some nice things to say about the movie. It's got a very good use of color. In particular, the color red is an effective motif throughout the movie. The movie in general is very well shot, but you would, expect that from a filmmaker like Argento. And the first couple of kills that are staged in the movie are actually very decent. I mean, especially the opening scene. In fact, the opening scene kind of sets you up for a really juicy bloodbath of a giallo that unfortunately Argento doesn't quite deliver on, but we'll get to that. The scene itself is very good. The way that once the victim has been killed, the way that her red attire kind of sort of like, almost sort of seems to sort of like melt right into the blood that's kind of pouring out of her wounds was very well staged. I liked it done as an overhead shot, and the way that it lingered on it was, very brutal, but it gave you a lot of time to take it in. It almost kind of reminded me of something out of like, the Neon Demon or something like that. I mean, you can be sure that a director like Refn is familiar with Argento's work, but again, that's another discussion for another time. And I really liked the musical score in the movie as well. It feels very giallo, very European, but with a very contemporary sort of like, production and sort of like undertone to it. It doesn't feel like it's retro giallo, which is nice. Again, it's nice to see something that doesn't feel old occasionally. And I also like the whole concept behind the film where the lead character has to wear the titular dark glasses because she's been blinded in an accident. And that accident, by the way, is preceded by a very well done car chase. And if nothing else, I like the fact that in this car chase, well, first of all, it's over in a matter of seconds, not a matter of minutes. And the reason that it's over so fast is because, in this movie, when cars crash, they actually crash. They don't, keep going like Mario Kart characters in one of those Hollywood chases. So I like that, was over as sort of quickly and swiftly as it was. I thought that was rather refreshing, actually. And the way that the violence is staged in terms of the death that is caused by the accident. She is being chased by the killer, but she does not actually die herself. And that actually does also lead to the surviving son of the people who are killed in the accident being someone who she is sort of paired up for the rest of the movie. And I like their relationship for the most part. I mean, again, it felt a little bit underutilized, but if nothing else, I can appreciate the concept behind the orphan child and the blind woman. And unfortunately, I think that's kind of where the nice things that I have to say about this, oops, bumped the camera there, where the nice things that I have to say about this end. Because after that, you've got, first of all, a very bland killer. Okay, and when it's finally revealed who the killer actually is, because for those of you who are not aware, giallos do tend to revolve around a black glove masked mystery killer. And he is that by design, but as soon as he takes his mask off, there's no sort of big, huge reveal to it, at least not for me, anyways. Nothing about it felt outrageous or surprising. It was just sort of like, okay, it's that guy. Sure, works for me. And actually, the more I think about it, the fact that it's this guy and the reason that he's out to get the lead character is like the most sort of pathetic incel cliche in the world. But oh well. Um, and then throughout the movie, even in sequences where there are good ideas at play, it's undone by a lot of awkward editing. As an example, there's a scene early on where the lead character leans in to kiss one of her Johns and initiate sex. And rather than showing us the whole sex scene, we see just enough nudity for it to be sort of titillating. And then as the lead character is moving into the camera, it fades to black. And then when it fades back again, the sex has been done and they're having their conversation, and that's just a nice little way to sort of circumvent going through a bit of a trope. Cool. But the only problem is when the character approaches the camera, it's done in a very sort of like amateurish, miscalculated kind of way. She essentially just kind of like puckers her lips like she's gonna kiss and moves into the camera. It's very strange. Like literally, it looks like this. Very weird. Now had they, just maybe cut to a more extreme close up of the character's lips and maybe sort of zoomed in from there as her lips are parting, or let the dark kind of sort of spill out of her lips in a more subtle way from that vantage, I think it might have worked. But unfortunately, the way that it plays out in the movie, they botched it. The second sequence where the awkward editing really stood out to me like a sore thumb was later in the movie when one character, the character played by Dario's daughter, Asia Argento, is leaving our two main characters, and she passes the killer in his white van. And when she does, I think it would probably be easy enough for reasons that, you'd have to see the movie to understand. It's easy enough for the two of them to recognize each other at this point, and furthermore, more importantly, as viewers, it's easy enough for us to understand that they recognize each other without a whole lot of hand holding. But as the vehicles pass each other, you get for both characters a moment where they see the van or the car respectively passing them, not very quickly, by the way, going at a pretty good Sunday drive, cool breeze, slow pace. And they have a good gander at that. And then on top of that, the movie does a freeze frame that flashes back to one of them seeing the other earlier in the movie. And again, it does this for both of them. And it just pads on like an extra 10 seconds of awkwardness that, the movie did not need and we did not need. I mean, honestly, like, you give me, an editing room and I could chop that scene down into something that would be a lot more concise and still perfectly understandable. I honestly could. I don't like to sort of puff up my chest like that, but this is one instance where, an amateur could have done it better. Sorry, but there you go. For that matter, I almost wonder if an earlier scene involving a cop dying is maybe the result of poor editing choices as well, because well, it's either that or this is the dumbest cop ever, because the killer's van is speeding towards him and he has plenty of room to hop to either side. If I remember right, I think there's even a crosswalk white line right there that he could follow. So literally there's a nice little escape route that has been laid out for him in, bright white. And instead of going either direction or even running at all, he just plants his feet and pulls out his gun like he's Roger Murtaugh in the first Lethal Weapon movie, shooting the bad guy at the end in the alley there. It's just like that. He just plants his feet and shoots to kill. And big surprise, the van speeds all the way down that alley, smokes him, and that's his ass. And again, as much as my first inclination is like, why would he be that stupid? I almost wonder if you had, edited the scene a little bit more tightly, you could at least be convinced that the van was just coming at him out of nowhere so fast that he didn't even have time to react. And in fact, a similar thing happens later in the movie when the killer is yet again driving towards someone with his white van. And, they've got a shotgun cocked, loaded, ready to go. But the person holding the gun just sits there and gawks at this guy until he has almost run all the way into him. And again, I don't get it. Either this guy has macaroni for brains, or, this scene should have been edited way more tightly so that, we are at least, thinking that, this was some guy who was really hauling ass out of nowhere. And then for all the good things, the movie is also let down by a lot of really sort of, let me see if I have my notes here. Yeah, stupid and convoluted choices that, really just seem designed to pad the runtime of the movie. There's, let me see what I had here. Yeah, a lot of things like, as an example, a point where they break into a house because they think it's going to be a safe place for them to hide, that really that entire sequence goes nowhere aside from the fact that it's responsible for the death of, you know, the two cops. You could probably cut that scene out and the rest of the movie would function no differently. I mean, for that matter, you could cut those two cops out of the movie, and I don't think the movie would function that much differently, to tell you the truth, because as I think a couple of reviews have already touched on, you don't see the cops really ever actively investigating or sleuthing or doing anything proactive. And then beyond all that, just a whole lot of other small instances of people really circling around things or drawing them out way longer than they have to, just to make this movie feel a little bit longer. And that does end up working almost a little too well. I mean, I have to admit, while I was never completely bored, I was getting restless, you know, during some of the middle passages of this movie. I mean, when your movie's not even quite 90 minutes with credits and I'm thinking about checking my watch, not a good sign. So on the whole, I guess I would just say that, you know, while I think that, you know, Argento did make some good steps towards getting back to his roots here, he doesn't quite stick the landing. It's not horrible. It's not Dracula 3D, thank God. But it's still not quite the comeback that he needed, you know, after that being his previous movie and then a 10-year absence following. Especially not in a year when there's been such a strong turnout for horror, especially that this past autumn has been a remarkable period for independent horror. And, you know, if Argento's going to try and stage a comeback, I mean, I think it's in his interest to like do everything he can to kind of like, you know, school the younger generation on how horror is done and just really try to step it up. And unfortunately, this time around, he didn't step it up. So I guess I would say, you know, well, I can't go out of my way to heartily recommend this. If you've seen everything else on Shudder and you're a big, you know, diehard Argento fan, maybe give it a look. For a more casual viewer, I would check out something like Suspiria or Deep Red, which is my personal choice first. Anyways, thanks for hanging around to listen to me ramble. I will hopefully have something for you again soon. Happy Halloween, happy October. Talk to you later.